Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's September 15th program, Charting a Course for Foster Care in Oregon. My name's Andrew Kallick, and I am City Club's president. Today's City Club comes to you live from the 5th Street Market District in the heart of downtown Eugene, and it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our speakers and to all of you joining us in person, online, and over the radio. For 3 decades, the City Club of Eugene has remained dedicated to its founding mission to build community vision through open inquiry. In accordance with our mission and purpose, we hope to connect people throughout our community and across generations, identities, experiences, and perspectives. You are invited this week and every week to join us in this effort, to share your wisdom, learn something new, and take active steps to make a difference in this city and region we all love. Of course, we cannot do this work alone, so I want to give a special thank you this afternoon to our Platinum, Community, and Diamond sponsors. The Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, serving as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente, which exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. More information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare provider for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. And the AARP of Oregon, a trusted and positive force for social change using the experience and leadership of volunteer members to benefit all Oregonians as we age. More information at states.aarp.org/Oregon. And thank you to the City of Eugene and to Lane County for their support as well. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I invite you to support our work by becoming an individual member, a business or community sponsor, or to suggest an idea for an upcoming program. You can do all those things and more at cityclubofeugene.org. Your support and engagement make these community conversations possible. And of course, City Club isn't just about conversation, it's about taking that conversation and translating it into action. And it's our hope that with informed understanding, you'll engage in the issues impacting our community, including an issue that affects so many across our state, our foster care system. While the number of children in foster care has been declining, nearly 5,000 youth remain in foster care across the state. There are no simple solutions to the challenges facing our system, but there are reasons to be hopeful. Recent polling shows that Oregonians across the political spectrum believe that foster care should be a priority. And we have hardworking, passionate professionals who are dedicated and have dedicated their lives to making things better, and that includes today's panelists. We have Judge Valerie Love of the Lane County Circuit Court, Kendra Jones, the Executive Director of CASA Lane County, and Chuck Nyby, the Managing Director for the Oregon Department of Human Services Child Welfare Division. Please join me in welcoming them to the City Club of Eugene.
Well, hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Just want to say thank you to that. I understand I have about 8 minutes to talk. I didn't time this out, so hopefully it's going to fit within that window. Appreciate the introduction. As Andrew mentioned, I'm Chuck Nyby. I'm one of the Child Welfare Program Managers here in Lane County. So I think I want to just first start off by extending some recognition and a thank you to all of the families that are providing care for kids who are in foster care in Lane County. What they do and what they offer in their service is an incredible act of love for children who are not able to live with their parents. And I don't know if any of you in here do that, but if you do, you understand how much that really takes and how much dedication and service that requires of people. So I just want to recognize and extend a thank you to our foster parent community. I'd like to start off by just sharing a little bit about our agency's vision for children in our community. We know through years of doing this work and research that children do best when they are with their families, they're connected to their family networks, their community, and their culture. And so we really are striving as an agency to use foster care and separating kids from their families as our last resort in our safety intervention. And I wanted to highlight a few positives and developments that we've seen currently and over the last few years in that endeavor. Right now in Lane County, we do a really great job of placing children who need to be placed outside of their parents' home with relatives or people known to those children. 60% of our overall foster parent community are either relatives or people who have established relationships with children. And I'll get into some numbers in a little bit to kind of break that down. We have providers in our community that do exceptional work caring for kids that have really complex needs, providing a family environment for kids in lieu of congregate care or institutional settings. And sometimes they're doing that even when kids have been identified as needing higher levels of care. And so we have families in our community that are just doing incredible work to serve those children. In the last 5 or so years, in Lane County specifically, we have seen a reduction in the overall number of kids in foster care by around 50%. And I'll get into our current numbers, but that again is another testament to not just our agency, but our community, the court system, our community partners that are serving families. Our foster parent community right now, we're asking a lot of them. We're asking them to serve kids, sometimes more than one. They're asked to do a lot of transportation, opening their homes. The thing that I wanted to highlight that they're doing right now that I think is really incredible is we have a lot of examples of foster parents that are partnering with and or connecting with children's family systems, their parents, their relatives, that are communicating, that they're offering their time, sometimes their homes for parenting time to create those connections for kids. And that really fits with our vision of keeping kids connected to their families, their community, and their culture. And so we have a lot of foster parents who are really embracing that and doing some really incredible work with families. We as a state, and certainly in Lane County, have been paying attention to disparate outcomes for Black, African American, American Indian, Alaskan Native children that enter our system at all and in foster care. One of the highlights and strengths that I'd like to highlight there is we have watched a downward trend in the number of American Indian, Alaskan Native children that are placed in foster care. And in the last year, our agency has not placed one child who is an enrolled tribal member in a foster care setting, which is a pretty incredible development. Unfortunately, we're not seeing the same trend with our Black and African American children in our community, and we still have a lot of work to do there. When I was looking at some data in preparation for this, I wanted to share just some numbers about what it means, like what just overall our foster care population looks like. Right now in Lane County, we have around 575 to 600 kids that are in the foster care system at this moment. 50% of those children are placed with relatives or children known to, or people known to that child. The other 50% are in non-relative general applicant foster homes. However, what we see is our total number of providers in Lane County who are foster parents, we have 366 total providers. Only 129 are general applicant homes. 237 are relatives or people known to children. And when I was doing some of the reading ahead of this presentation, I saw in the survey that 93% of people surveyed said that children in foster care is a really important issue. What we're seeing statewide is a downward trend in families that are coming to want to be foster parents for kids. And so what I would really offer to any of you or people you're connected to is we have a population of kids that need families despite our goals, despite our efforts to keep kids at home. We have kids that need families, that to reduce the number of kids per per family, per parent, and really just to kind of like do the work we want to do and get those kids back to their families, stay connected to their community. We are also seeing a shift in the kids that are in care, where our foster care population is getting older. Out of all of the kids that I mentioned, 29% of those kids, or roughly, are age 13 and older. Those kids stay in foster care longer, they have a longer time, and sometimes they don't reach permanency, they age out of our system. And we are really struggling, not just in our system, but across our community, with access to mental health treatment, access to developmental disability services, and we are asking families to care for kids with really complex needs, and those kids typically have more placement moves, and we're really just seeing a lot of challenges there to support those age groups in our foster care system. Let's see what else I have. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is with our agency's vision to keep kids safely at home, we are seeing challenges with, as I just mentioned, not just for kids, but access to mental health treatment for parents. We see a lot of challenges in working with parents who have untreated substance use issues. Certainly the fentanyl epidemic in our community is a significant threat to families and children. And I think that's something that's challenging systems across the board, to know how do we effectively keep kids safe and in the least restrictive way possible. And then, as I mentioned, we have youth that are in foster care that need a higher level of treatment. They have co-occurring complex needs, and we're asking parents, relatives, and foster parents to care for kids that are really needing more than they're receiving. The resources, the access, the opportunities are really challenged to provide for those kids. And to give some kudos to our child welfare casework staff, we're often being asked to more or less create solutions for these situations that don't exist through the traditional referral networks or streams for how we get families the help that they need. So I think in summary, one last thing. In the last year, I'm just going to share some numbers of a trend that we're seeing. When I mentioned we're seeing fewer general applicant homes. So in the last year, we opened 68 foster homes that are relatives to children, 26 that the person had an established relationship with a child, and only 16 where someone was coming to our system as like what we call a general applicant home. We've closed 8 child-specific, 7 relative, and only 3 general applicants. So what we're seeing across the state is we're doing a great job of partnering with relatives and people known to children, but we are not seeing the same trend with our general community to come forward and offer their time, services, or homes to be foster parents. And there's lots of reasons for that, but that's a focus that we have. We're trying to set goals around recruitment and retention to really support families being able to step into that and work with children in the foster care system. So that's what I have to offer, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Okay, I was just asking Chuck what time it was so I can try to keep it at 8 minutes. I wondered before, as I was preparing for this, am I going to be too short, or am I going to just go on and on? Because I think we can have a lot of conversation about the topic today. First, I want to say thank you very much for including me to be part of this conversation that is really important to our community. My name's Valerie Love. I am currently the Chief Juvenile Judge for Lane County Circuit Court. We have 2 full-time judges dedicated to the work that we do there. I just marked 12 years on the bench this month, and I am really grateful that I get the opportunity to serve the community in this fashion. I think most of my time on the bench has been spent at juvenile working with children and families. And I like to call them our children, because really this is our community. And it's my belief that the safer and healthier our kids and families are, the safer and healthier our community is. And I think a lot of people don't know what goes on over in our building across from Autzen Stadium unless you do the work, unless you take the time to be involved. It's sort of this mystery. I think even within the legal community, folks don't necessarily know what we do at juvenile court. And I think once people know, you're gonna care, and you're gonna wanna know what you can do, or how can you get somebody else you know involved. And so I will tell you, when Chuck started talking about the numbers, and you'll hear from Kendra about what CASA does, please know that we are busy and we are working hard. And we work collaboratively with our community partners. So we, CASA, DHS, Oregon Youth Authority, Department of Youth Services, our Citizen Review Board, we meet regularly to work together to talk about what's going on with our families and community and issues that might need to be raised. And even though we have our own lane and our own charges, depending on what organization or agency we come from, we're there because we want to be. People choose this work. You don't sort of get assigned, I mean, you choose it. And this is by far the most rewarding work I've ever done in my life. It is the hardest work I've ever done. But I'm really, really glad to be able to do this. And so just quickly, I wanted Chuck to go first. Thank you, Chuck. Didn't know, because he was going to be able to give you the numbers on the actual number of kind of children that are in care, and so what is the population that we're working with. What I can tell you is when I checked this week, we have over 1,300 open case numbers, cases active, busy within our juvenile court, and we are generally required to review those once a year. The Citizen Review Board, which is a volunteer opportunity I'll share with you about a little bit, they help us by doing some mandatory statutory reviews that require a lot of work and a lot of review. Of those 1,300 open cases, and sometimes youth and families will have more than one case open for a variety of reasons, 88 are on the juvenile justice side, so delinquency cases where youth may have committed acts which would be considered a crime in adult court. But the majority of our caseload is dependency or child welfare work. And so I want you to hear from us that everyone that is involved, our attorneys, our CASAs, our caseworkers, we see each other all the time. We're in court all the time. I ask a lot of everybody, and then they still have their work to do outside of court. And so I say that because we ask the same of our foster parents, and I'm really glad that Chuck had an opportunity to acknowledge the work that they do. And I kind of want to not, talk about war stories, because we could do that forever, and I don't think that serves a purpose today, but I want to just give you an idea of, what might be happening from the child's lens as they go into care, right? Especially if it's with someone that they don't know, because that frames the context for what we're asking foster parents to do, right? Our kids, our children, and I've been doing this a while, they experience things that nobody would want to have to read about. I'm just going to leave it there with one more thing, that even I am surprised sometimes with what I read about, okay? And that's a lot for especially the frontline workers and everybody who's working with the children and families. So imagine, let's say you're 7 years old, right? And you've got a couple of younger siblings. And you may have been experiencing abuse and neglect for a while, but some event happens that says you can't be safely at home. And the agency does a lot of work, and they're doing a lot of work before I see the cases to try to keep kids at home. Lots of services, maybe working with the families for months sometimes to try to maintain the home and connection without having to have court interventions. But let's say the event happens, and so you're 7 and you've got 2 younger siblings, and you're the one who's been taking care of them a lot, and a circumstance presents itself last minute, and all of a sudden you go to a stranger's home, but you might not go with your siblings, right? And even though the agency makes every effort, there might not be a placement that night that can take all 3 children at the same time. So you're in a stranger's home. Where's your family? There's nobody I know here, right? Are you going to have to go to a new school, right? When you just maybe made friends last year at the school you were at. Are you going to be worried about your siblings because you're the the child maybe who's been parentified and had to be making breakfast for them every morning. Are you worried about your parent? You know, are they alive? Are they going to be okay with some of the circumstances we've seen, particularly with substance use? And then how are you handling your own trauma? How are you managing that? So when a foster parent steps up and helps, we're asking them to provide a safe place to land for these children, for our children. And so they take the child into their home, right? You're the parent now, you're acting as a parent to provide love and support and services, and you have a lot more to do just besides having the child in the home. Are you getting them to school? Are you getting them to their therapy appointments? Are you making sure they get to visits with their parents, grandparents, sibling? Are they getting evaluations? Are there medical appointments that are needed? And then we have our foster parents come to court. We really love when we have the foster parents there at court so we can get an additional set of eyes and report on what's going on. And foster parents have a right to be heard. So we ask foster parents to do a lot, and we're appreciative of what they do, and we've got very dedicated foster parents within our community. I think it's important to note when we've got relatives, you know, imagine how heartbreaking it is for a grandparent, like, who am I going to support, my grandchild or my child? And it's heartbreaking sometimes, but people step up. And so I thought it was really important to share kind of that perspective with all of you. I want to talk a little bit about a kind of a current challenge that we're seeing and something that's different. Before I was at juvenile court for a while, went back downtown, and I've been back for a number of years now. And something that's really different, and I think when I speak with my colleagues across the state, other judges, and when I speak with my judicial colleagues across the country, it is not unique to Lane County that we are seeing more youth with significant mental health challenges. I think we have that with the adults. Judge McAlpin actually created a special behavioral health docket downtown because we are just seeing the increase. But we're seeing more youth with these issues in the child welfare system, also in the juvenile justice system, and sometimes within both systems. And as Chuck said, the placements that we need, the level of care, that if we could have a perfect world and the right program for a child to go to, we don't have it when they need it. So then what do? Right? And especially if the youth has found themselves, being lodged in detention because of some act that somebody got hurt, and then what do? And I will tell you that the agencies work hard together and are often, we've got everybody at the hearings to work together. DHS shows up on delinquency cases even if they don't have an open petition to try to help and collaborate to find the right placement. But when we don't have the right level of care, and I feel like this is coming up weekly in my cases that I'm seeing, then we do ask parents, foster parents, who may be overburdened already and may not have specialized training, and even if they do, it still might not be enough to take in the youth while we wait for a bed. And we may have youth who need, a secure psychiatric bed, but if somebody's more serious, they get bumped up to the top, and then we're in a holding pattern. And then what do? Right? And so for those kids, if we don't have the right level of care, then there's a greater chance that that placement's going to disrupt, and then there's another placement for that child, which just kind of exponentially creates more challenging circumstances for everybody. And so that's one of the issues that, we are seeing more often. And so, I don't think anyone has a monopoly on saying we don't have enough resources, but that's something we're really seeing, and we can ask for more resources, but I think right now the call to action from my perspective for the court and for anybody who wants to be involved is, what do we do now? What can we do now with what we have? Because I don't see anything changing immediately or anytime soon. So I think I'm proud of the work that we do in our county for collaborating and having the agencies work with one another. I appreciate them because I do ask a lot of everybody. And I think we're fortunate that we have people that care, that are on our teams, if you will. So then what do we do? What can you do? And so there's a lot of opportunities for us, I think, to collectively improve our circumstances for our youth and families. One, raising community awareness is a big thing. And so forums like this, where we get to have conversations about what's going on, gives you information, and we hope that you share that with others who maybe have an interest or opportunity to serve. And so I think, and knowing about what our youth and families experience. So one thing that Chuck touched on, people can choose to be a foster parent. That's big calling, but certainly there's not an overflow or an excess of foster parents in our system. And so if you're open, consider it. If you know somebody who might be open, maybe have that conversation with them. But perhaps if you're not able to be a full-time foster parent, have conversations about maybe serving as respite care. Some of our kids were with higher needs. Sometimes the foster parents need some time. They need a break. And if there can be respite, that keeps the placement intact. That can help. But I think there are other ways, even if you're not going to be directly involved as a foster parent or respite care provider, to get involved. You know, I Googled real quick last night, what do kids in foster care need? Because I wondered, like, what would that search turn up? And there's information about they need hygiene products, they need blankets, and yes, they do. But what they need are safe, healthy connections and consistency. And you can't put that in a bag to give them, right? They need connection. So you could become a CASA. We ask a lot of CASAs, but Kendra's going to talk with you about that. Maybe you have limited amount of time. The Citizen Review Board is another opportunity to serve, and it's not a court hearing, and you get information and you make findings about cases, and anybody who wants more information, we're happy to provide that at a later time. Maybe you become a mentor, or maybe you are a business owner or know somebody who owns a business who could provide a job opportunity for a teen or even an informational interview. Those things that maybe we've all had access to that no one thinks about. And so I think, the importance of connection and people choosing to be involved in the lives of our children and families cannot be understated. I recently attended our juvenile judges conference in Oregon, and we talked a lot about the importance of connection. And if you think, well, I don't know if I can do any of the things the judge talked about because I don't know if I have time, little pieces can still make a big difference for kids, right? And finding out what they need, what they want. We had a youth speak on a panel, and she had aged out of foster care in Multnomah County. And she was a member of a Native American tribe. I'm not remembering one at this time, but she really talked about the fact that nobody really asked her what was important along the way, because she had been in some residential care placements. Heartbreakingly, one of the counselors at the residential placement told her she wasn't Native because she looked white. And so that was traumatizing for her, and she was really brave telling a big room full of judges about that. But it turned out, and I'm not going to remember this exactly, that her grandfather kind of was a well-known person within their tribe, and I don't remember what practices that he was known for. When she met somebody in another community who knew her grandfather, who could engage in those activities with her, she felt her identity shine again. She felt more complete again. We hear about other programs. This is on the delinquency side, but I think there's a parallel, and this is another opportunity I want to kind of put in your brain. One of the things we're looking at is how do we do probation for youth a little bit differently? And more focus is on connections. How do you create that kind of network of connections for youth rather than did you meet this condition, did you meet this condition, did you meet this condition? A program, and I'm not going to get all the specifics right, it's somewhere up in Washington that we learned about, probation officers sending kids to, there's a boat building club. And so all of the members are serving as mentors for these teens and teaching them how to build boats. So they're getting a skill, they're getting to be around someone positive, there's consistency in where they go. And I think those are untapped opportunities within our community. So I have probably taken way longer than my 8 minutes, but I wanted to be able to share with you the work that we're doing, the current challenges, but there's a lot of opportunity, I think, especially if we don't think about the traditional routes, and really appreciate you being here and inviting us today. Thank you.
Kendra Jones with CASA of Lane County. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I want to reiterate the thanks that we have for the foster care community, but also community partners like Every Child, Kids First, the work that's being done by 90 by 30. Our community really is wonderful in the way that we're trying to tackle these tough issues. And so I just wanted to recognize you all and also the CASAs that are here. Thank you so much for your dedication and the investment that you make in the children. It makes a huge difference. For those of you who are not aware of what CASA stand for, it is a court-appointed special advocate. We were founded, actually, we're a nationally accredited model, and founded by a judge in Seattle in the 70s when he was making some really difficult decisions on the behalf of a child, and he realized he didn't have all the information he needed to make those decisions and feel good about them. He had this dream that maybe we could recruit some volunteers in the community, some people that I know that we could give just enough training that they could be involved with the child and get to know the case and all the people involved with that child and be able to come and be the eyes and the ears of the judge and bring information back that could help the judge make better informed decisions. And so out of that, CASA was formed, and in 1982, the National CASA Association was founded, and then in 1987, the Oregon CASA movement kind of began. A comprehensive statute was actually passed mandating that a CASA shall be provided for every child that enters the child welfare system. However, that came as an unfunded mandate. So we did not receive the necessary resources that came with that mandate, meaning we deeply rely on the generosity of our community to do this important work. I'm thankful that since that time that we do have a state allocation, but it probably only covers about 34% of our budget. And so as you can imagine, we have to do a lot of work to make sure that we have the funding necessary. And we're only providing support for about 40% of the children that need a CASA currently. I'm really proud of our organization, and I think coming out of a global pandemic, volunteer-driven organizations and children and families really experienced a lot of challenges and hardship. As you can imagine, the isolation that children and youth faced, and the providers that were trying to do the best to provide the support that they needed to be stable through that time. I think we're seeing exacerbation from that in some of the tougher situations with the mental health of our youth is really kind of showing up in the cases. So I appreciate you touching on both of you. I think inflation, high housing costs, and the opioid crisis are huge, and are definitely, you have to look at root causes. Why is this happening? I think that our overwhelmed mental health system exacerbates these challenges. I think wait times, the issues that children and youth are facing then just escalate, and that of their parents as well. I know that there's challenges associated with how do we pay for regular drug testing for parents who addiction is named as the root cause for the removal of the child. As a state, we face that. How do we pay for that? I think on a positive note, we are seeing a reduction in the number of children. Lane County has historically had one of the highest child maltreatment rates in the state. At one time, there were over 1,600 children in our county annually that were spending time in the system, and now, those numbers have dipped to below 1,000. So I do think that we can feel proud about that, and I definitely count, Jeff, your work with 90 by 30 as being a big part of that reduction, and I'm thankful for that. I would love it if I could work myself out of a job personally. But there's still work to be done and there's challenges. As I mentioned, we're only providing the powerful voice of a court-appointed special advocate for 40% of the children who need and deserve that. We ask for our volunteers to make at least a 2-year commitment because we want to be that consistent presence in their life. I will share personally that I grew up in a really abusive home. I fled violence at the age of 16 and I was facing homelessness. My mom, or my best friend's mom, stepped forward and she provided me with support to file with the police department and then file for a protective order. She then took me into her home and provided support that, quite frankly, probably kept me from child trafficking or other abuses that could have happened. These kids are navigating such challenging situations, and they deserve and they need our support. There's so many ways that we've talked about today that people can get involved in. I really do believe that these kids are our kids and they're our future. They deserve to have that support. I can tell you that had my best friend's mom not stepped in and been that guiding force at such a critical time in my life, I know I wouldn't be standing in front of you today doing the work that I do, and I don't even know that I would be alive. So it's just so important, and I guess I share that personally. I think over the next several years for CASA, we're looking to deepen and expand our roots. We enjoy and appreciate some very long-standing relationships with business partners and donors that give to us year after year. We need to increase that and we need to expand that. KPD Insurance is one of those, and I share that because they play a really unique role in our organization that they allow for us to do an annual presentation with their staff focused on volunteer recruitment. They hold third-party event that benefits CASA. They sponsor our events. And one of their staff members, they pay for one of their staff members to come and take minutes at every board meeting, and she's been doing it for over 20 years. So these types of relationships are the relationships that are needed to be able to sustain until and unless we can get the full allocation at the state level and the federal level that we need. We have to have this type of support. And so I just want to thank you for inviting me today to be a part of this, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you all so much. We will start those question and answers in just a moment, but first I'd like to thank the business and in-kind sponsors whose support helps to make City Club possible. Our gold sponsors, Network Charter School, Homes for Good, Hirschner Hunter LLC, and Evans Elder Brown and Subert. Thank you also to our in-kind sponsors, that's KRVM 91.9 Radio, Pack Info and Simplified Computing LLC, Dotson's Photography, the Ninkazi Better Living Room, and Claim 52. Also a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station KLCC FM 89.7 for airing City Club programs Monday nights at 7 p.m. For those listening at home right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We love that you're here. You can find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC as well as on our YouTube channel and podcast. Like I said, we'll take a brief break now and we'll be back with your questions. Thanks very much. Welcome back to the City Club of Eugene and our program on foster care in Oregon. We're going to transition right now into questions and answers, so please tell us who you are and let's hear your question. Thank you.
Hi everybody, Sarah Stewart, Kids First and City Club member. I just wanted to thank the panel today. You all did a really beautiful job about talking about, a challenging and important topic, but you also, I know personally that you do really great work every single day, really hard work, and you're really committed to it, and so I just really appreciate that. I think we heard today about, how fewer kids are going into the system and you need foster parents. We also heard that kids who are coming into care are older, they have complex needs, they've probably experienced a lot of abuse and neglect, and so I guess my question is for people who maybe are considering, gosh, should I be a foster parent? Could I be a foster parent? Do I have the training or the skills needed to do that? Could you talk to us a little bit about what makes a good foster parent?
Well, thanks for the easy question right off the bat there, Sarah. Appreciate that. I'll start. I think obviously the first thing is just the willingness to serve. It's hard to invite a child into your home, your family. That's kind of our most private, intimate part of our life, and really work through the awkwardness of that relationship where, like the judge talked about, you step into the role as a parent, but this is a child that's not known to you. They have trauma histories, they have their own complex needs, and they don't really look at you as their family or as a parent. And so I think being selfless to a degree is helpful, having a heart for service. And I think the last thing that I would say is having the courage to really meet some of these young people where they're at. I found that when young people who have challenges with behaviors or mental health, having stability, predictability, and knowing that someone is just there for them is a huge first step in their journey toward any kind of recovery. And a lot of kids, it's hard. It's a hard hurdle to get over. But a lot of times who they are as people is not exactly the way that they show up on paper or through their history. And so being willing to take that step and just be vulnerable and to just try it, to just really be courageous I think those are some of the qualities I would offer.
I would say patience and commitment, because I think these kids and these youth really deserve to have people that are patient with their process and their journey, and they need people that are going to be committed.
I don't know that I have too much else to add. I think a piece too that Chuck maybe mentioned in his earlier comments, we are seeing non-relative foster parents who are able, and all the circumstances for each case are different, but to form positive relationships with the parents. And that makes a world of difference. So sometimes maybe a youth goes back home, but that foster parent, that former foster parent's able to provide respite care for a parent or some other, connection. And so you're strengthening the connections kind of all the way around, because every time we have to have a youth move, that's another loss. So the patience, commitment, and I think the more folks who are willing to volunteer and can communicate about what they need to be successful as foster parents for some of our youth who have more challenges, then we might not be overburdening our existing folks who are working with us. So that's the only different piece I would add.
Hi, Jeff Todal with the University of Oregon Center for the Prevention of Abuse and Neglect and the 90 by 30 initiative. So I wanted to echo what others are saying about thank you so much for the work you're doing, the work you do every day, and the comments, Chuck, that you made about some of the numbers coming down, fewer kids entering into the foster care system is, of course, that's encouraging. And then all of this happens in a context. And so it's true, we believe, right, that those kids who are in the system actually represent a very small percentage of the kids in our community who are experiencing trauma. And so what I'm wondering about is, for those of us who are not in the systems that you're in, working hard every day, living in the community, what would you want us to do? Those things that really don't cost anything, that we can do as individuals to change the conditions that allow trauma to happen in the first place. What would you hope for? Cultural change, and what can I do? Yeah.
Another easy question, right? Thank you for that. I think be open to being involved, you know? So kind of off the top of my head, I think about what can you do to kind of be involved with our community for kids who are younger? Because what can we do to help the families without money, right? Mentor, is there anything you can go and do in the schools? Your time, right? Which may have a cost, but your time to stay connected with our youth and families. A lot of them don't have family support as well. And so how do you create some natural opportunities by sharing your time? I think can make a big difference. And then you're keeping eyes out on kids as well. Because I think it's important for us to make sure they get what they need early, because it is harder when we're later on in their life. It's not impossible, but it becomes a bigger challenge. So anything you can do to give of your time in any circumstance to make opportunities available for safe and positive connections, I think is one thing that you can do.
Yeah, there's just a simple term that I've heard we talk about on our leadership team. I've heard folks share is we talk a lot in our community about being a mandatory reporter. What if we've shifted that or expanded that to be a mandatory supporter of a family or a child, right? And so it's one thing to have eyes and ears and watching for those kids that you think are not being cared for in the way that maybe we think kids should receive. But what if instead of making a phone call, you were able to offer support of some kind? And I don't mean you all just in this room, but as a community, as a school system, as a public health system, as neighbors, as friends. Like that type of support can often, you know, and you heard Kendra talk about her story, right? Like that kind of support can keep kids from ever entering the system. Really quick personal story. On Sunday night, there was a young woman that showed up on our doorstep. She didn't have a phone. We had no idea who she was. And she said to my wife, would you call her a cab? We did. She left. She called back about 2 hours later and said, I left my wallet at your house. It was the last $35 to her name. And so I drove it to her at 10:30 at night at a gas station. I gave her her wallet. I didn't really want to do more than that, but it was a way that I offered support to somebody in need that came to me. We could have said, hey, we don't know you, please leave. But we did two things that were just really basic for her to get to the next place she needed to go.
I've been looking at statistics for outcomes for foster children. Well, I look at it all the time and thinking about, you know, how can we do an early intervention and make an impact. You know, foster children, children in the foster care system tend to have much lower graduation rates. We are looking at, we're launching a pilot project in partnership with the Eugene 4J School District just to focus on education. How can we provide additional resources and support to help kids be successful in school? I think that there's lots of different avenues and intervention points that we can look at. And I think that most of all, that relationship is really the resiliency factor. You know, there was a lot of things that my best friend's mom did for me that obviously like helped me with important, you know, kind of like benchmarks that I needed to take care of. But just having her support, you know, it shows, our research shows that that creates a resiliency factor for people with high adverse childhood experiences. So being involved, having a relationship.
Hi there, I'm Jen Brown. I'm with Every Child Lane County. And my question might mainly be for Chuck, but you talked about needing more general applicant homes in our community. What steps is the Department of Human Services taking to increase that number? You talked about maybe looking at your strategy and maybe changing it.
Yeah, thank you. So each district in the state has an assigned what their job title is called a retention and recruitment champion. And that person coordinates a variety of different, community events, table offerings where we're trying to really share information, right? Get information out into the community that if you're interested, here's the number you call, here's the QPR code you scan, here's how you can get involved. What we were talking about just this morning is how do we go from sharing information, garnering interest, to meeting people where they're at to take the next step from going, I'm interested or I have a heart for this, to the next phase of I want to sign up and I want to offer to be in this position. And so we're really talking through ways, and all of us are different, right? The way that we, what would help us get to that point. We were really talking through strategies of how could we partner with interested or prospective foster parents to go from that place of pre-contemplation or contemplation to action. And all of us could use a different thing to get there. Obviously, every child is in a significant support and spreading awareness and getting the word out, being of service in our community. And we really just want to invite people that are on the place of thinking is to how could we help? How can we get you to that next place? Whether it's meeting people who do that work, whether it's talking, understanding what to expect from the process or the agency, normalizing that level of intrusion into your family life, whatever it might be to help people kind of get to that next step. So I don't have all the answers around that, but I think that's what we're realizing is we need to move from spreading awareness to how do we start taking action.
Karin Knudsen, City Club member, and thank you all for the work that you do to support kids and families in our community at such a vulnerable and difficult time. I am asking a question for a visitor today who wanted to know more about the specifics of what happens to kids when they age out of our local foster care system. What does that look like when it happens at age 18, and where is more help needed?
I'll start. Okay. Well, I think the topic of aging out is a really good one and a really interesting one. And I think for young people that are in the child welfare system who are attending school, working, have aspirations of higher education, the supports and resources available to them are different than young people who are not doing those things. And as we talked about, whether it be trauma, mental health, substance use, or a combination of all of those things, I think that the group that has the hardest and the most challenges are those young people that are not progressing to independence in the way that adults that design systems have sort of placed a trajectory of here's how you get there, right? So young adults have a lot of support, funding, and for higher education, living expenses, things of that nature, if they have the capability of navigating those systems, even with support. Who we really need help for are those young adults that are not progressing in that trajectory, that are struggling with substance use, struggling with mental health, who, for whatever reason, are not in a place where they're able to navigate securing housing or applying for benefits. Those are the young people that we need the most help for. And I can't remember who said it, but one of our speakers talked about, I think it was Kendra, about the challenges and the cost of housing. A lot of the federal funding for young adults is well below what it costs to live in our community. And so access to housing, employment, education are really important, especially meeting young adults where they're at if they're not in that kind of like traditional trajectory of how one would gain independence. And remember, they often are disconnected from their family systems. If you're in the child welfare system at 18, means you didn't reach adoption, you didn't reach guardianship. You may not have a supportive person in your life, and all of us that grew up remember calling home to mom to say, I need money, or dad, or whoever your person was, because you misspent your money, and you don't know how you're going to make ends meet, and these kids don't have that connection. The judge can talk about it, but she does a wonderful job of making sure we're not exiting kids that are in those circumstances. And so we actually have, 15 to 20 young adults in our system that are still legally committed to child welfare, where we're providing housing support, we're providing placement, we're providing services, and those are generally the kids, like I said, that aren't meeting the eligibility requirements for the independent living services.
When older youth do choose to engage in CASA services, because obviously, as youth are aging, they have a voice in their process much more so than a younger child. Perhaps we offer Fostering Futures, which is an additional training for volunteers that are serving in that capacity, and we are serving youth that are over 18 that are still in the system.
We can keep a child, young adult's case open until they're 21, and that's a lot of folks think maybe at 18 it can end. I remember when I first started doing this work, I wondered, because we had some kids that were going to college, and some who we don't know where they are because they've run, and so it really kind of covered a broad spectrum. And I wondered, what makes the difference for a youth to be able to go down path A versus path B? And I'm not going to cite any research for you, but the thing that I've been told and the thing that we notice is there is a solid adult in their life that's been consistent, right? And so I think we have those cases, and sometimes we keep them open because there are there's access to certain benefits, I think, for youth who are on path A. Sadly, what we have too, though, are youth who have experienced so much trauma, and they're babies when they have it happen. They are adopted, and then their mental health blows up later. And we have another petition, and that adoptive resource, that their now parents are no longer available to be a resource. To say that's heartbreaking is an understatement. But those are some of the youth that, what are we going to do? Where's the appropriate level of care? Where's the service? They're now on a wait list, And so what I want to say is, we worry. DHS, they write a letter to the court every time a child's moved or we don't know where they're at. I mean, sometimes that's more than one a month, depending on the youth. And we have caseworkers that are driving around looking for kids. That's the level of dedication that we have in this community. And so it's a challenge, and sometimes we're just trying to make sure, do they have access to medical care? Are they fed? Can we let them know? Can we get them a place to put their head down at night? So there's a whole host of different circumstances under which we see kind of these older youth, young adults, but to make positive, long-standing, supportive connections for them can make a big difference in their lives.
That's all the time we have for today. Can everyone please thank me. Join me in thanking our panel. We're very grateful for everything you guys do every day, so thank you so much. Next week, September 22nd, we are going to take City Club on the road. That's to the Arcimoto Factory, 1600 West 5th Avenue. Don't show up here, show up over there. There's plenty of parking, whether you have an FUV, an SUV, any other type of V. Plenty of parking. It's going to be a fun program on the manufacturing economy of Metro Eugene, so hope to see you there. A few more notes today. A celebratory day for City Club. Longtime supporter Betty Taylor has a birthday tomorrow. Is that right, Betty? Betty, yeah. I was told a number, Betty, but I don't believe it. So I'm going to just leave it to you to inform everybody, but it's amazing to have you here every week, and we're very grateful. So happy birthday. Last but not least, you might have read that our immediate past president, Karin Knutson, launched a run for mayor this week. And in accordance with City Club's bylaws, she'll be departing the board, but will remain an active member. She's here today asking questions. And while City Club doesn't endorse candidates, I can say that we honor everybody who gets into the proverbial arena to try to make the city a better place. And so, Karin, we wish you good luck and safe campaigning in the months to come. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.